And welcome in, everybody, to Off with the Helmets. I'm Brady Tinker. Let's talk some Dallas Cowboys football. Thrilled to be here at East Coast Sports Investors, our new home for Off with the Helmets. Thursday night football is a national game. The Cowboys are on the big stage this week. The 11-4 Cowboys against the 7-8 problematic Tennessee Titans. And yet, it's the third game in 12 days for the Dallas Cowboys. They're a little bit tired. The win of the year came last week against Philadelphia. And now the strategy might be, let's rest a lot of people. I know that's not necessarily what you want to hear because there are 2 games left, and if Philadelphia loses their 2 and the Cowboys win their 2, then maybe the Cowboys win the East. Don't think that's going to happen. Let's talk about all this when we come back right now on Off of the Helmets. So here we go, Off of the Helmets. East Coast Sports Invest and Brady Tinker here for you on December 28th. Happy holidays to you. Happy New Year coming up. And the third game for the Dallas Cowboys in 12 days is rough. And I can find some statistics and some numbers for you that will get you very excited about this football team, like 36.3 points per game for the offense since Dak Prescott came back. Really good victories over some really good teams. There are 4 teams in the NFL that have better records than the Cowboys. The Cowboys have beaten 2 of those teams. They've beaten some quality teams this year. And they are kind of where I wanted them to be, and I think you wanted them to be, where here we are with 2 games left, and we have some momentum. We've gotten some big wins. We've beat some tough teams. We've overcome too many turnovers, et cetera, et cetera. But now we come upon a game against the Tennessee Titans in the oddest of things, where it's a Thursday night game, a national television game, your team against our team, 2 teams that think they're going to be in the playoffs. The Cowboys already are. The Titans won in. But the Titans don't even have to come. If the Titans could, by rules of the NFL, forfeit, they would. Because they've lost 5 straight. So that's one reason they may want to play a little bit. But next week, they play the Jacksonville Jaguars in week 18. It does not matter who wins or loses this week among those 2 teams. The entire division, the Jacksonville and Tennessee will contest, comes down to week number 18, Jacksonville against Tennessee. Therefore, the Titans most likely rest their big beastly back Derrick Henry, who has a calf issue, who hasn't practiced yet this week and is probably not going to play. Ryan Tannehill, their star quarterback, is out, and he's not going to play. So you're going to see the likes of Hassan Haskins and Austin Hooper featured offensively for the Tennessee Titans. Now, on the other hand, the Titans are a good defense, and they have a head coach that may be playing or coaching for his job because this thing's fallen apart a little bit, and it didn't end well last year after getting the number 1 seed in the AFC, and maybe because he's ready to go somewhere else. That's a whole different story. But the Titans don't need to play. And the Cowboys, to be honest with you, I guess you play this through. I guess if I sat in a room with any NFL personnel or anyone who's ever played the game, they would look at me and say, are you a fucking idiot? 2 games left to go. If they lose 2 and we win 2, we win the East and potentially number 1 seed in the NFC. You do not stop playing for a minute. And maybe that's where I should just stop and say, you know what? Nobody rests. You run this thing out. You whip the Tennessee Titans tomorrow night on national television, and you sit back and wait. And if the Eagles happen to lose because Jalen Hurts probably isn't going to play, then all of a sudden you're in this thing again, and you do it all over again next week. If they win on Sunday, then it's over, and you might be able to rest in week 18. That's probably right. But there is something, because I'm not saying that the Cowboys need to go to Tennessee and be fine with losing. That's not what I'm saying. Tennessee's not going to play hardly anybody. This Dallas Cowboys team has enough energy and enough really good players that if you sat Tank Lawrence and Micah Parsons and 3 or 4 other players that are dinged up, Tony Pollard probably shouldn't play, and some others, you still have a great chance to win this football team. You do. This team has momentum. They got the win of the year last Sunday. May not have been perfect. You may be, motherfucking a little bit because you were against Gardner Minshew and you weren't against Jalen Hurts, so maybe it doesn't count. It does too count. They hung 40 points on arguably a top 2 or 3 defense in the entire NFL in the Philadelphia Eagles. They played. They all played. And Dak Prescott and the offense and the wide receivers got going. The offensive line did a good job of keeping Dak upright. The team was confident and cocky and got a massive win for the psyche of this football team as they head towards the playoffs. Now, you may also be looking and pointing at your screen saying, wait a minute, motherfucker, you told us 4 weeks ago you wanted this thing to go all the way to the end, like the Giants did in those 2 years when they beat the Patriots, all the way to the end. And then they play in that first week of the playoffs because they're carrying momentum and they're feeling good about themselves. And no one's really, I did. I wanted all of that. But Micah Parsons is dead on his feet. This team defensively, in terms of pressuring the quarterback, has now seen 126 passes thrown against them in the last 3 games. They have 1 sack. Metrically, no team in the NFL in the last 2 weeks has been worse at giving up yards in the air, and third down conversions. None. Now, pretty good Jacksonville offense that got rolling, and certainly a pretty good Philadelphia offense. So not the biggest sin in the world, but those are numbers that are shocking to hear. So here's what I have. The Cowboys are now 7-1. This is all the good news. The Cowboys are 7-1 against teams with winning records. They've defeated, as I told you earlier, 2 of the 4 teams that have better records than them. And the offense is averaging 36.2 points a game since Dak Prescott came back. That is momentum and confidence. That's what we wanted, and those things are here. The big difference is, because Mike McCarthy told us this in week number 2, he said, as of now, the Dallas Cowboys are a defense-first operation. Well, the quarterback was out. The Hall of Fame left tackle was out. Didn't know how we were going to score points. We weren't going to score a lot of them. So what are we going to do? We're going to lean on the best unit. At the time, clearly, it was a healthy, badass defense that knew how to get sacks, put on pressure, turn the ball over. We're going to rely on our defense and our running game. We're going to play slow games with less plays, and we're going to try to win in the end. And damned if they didn't win 4 straight. So I was 100% with that. Now you would have to say that this team has fully gone to complete 180, because as we sit here right now, this is an offense-first operation. Dak Prescott is as healthy and cocky and confident as he has been probably since his first or second year in the league. CeeDee Lamb, finally, who didn't want to wear number 8, who did not look happy when Amari Cooper was gone. He's now the number 1, looks like it. 400-yard games in his last 7, running great routes, playing with confidence and arrogance, expecting the football on every down, accepting the fact that double or triple teams might be coming, and he might still need to make a play. CeeDee Lamb has ascended, skyrocketed in the last 4 or 5 weeks, and mostly since Dak Prescott's been back. Makes perfect sense. So those are the reasons that this is now an offense-first operation. Not to mention Tyron Smith back, figuring out how to play at right tackle, keeping the rest of your offensive line where it is. It makes sense. So here's my proposition. Let's get some rest versus the Titans. Not everybody. Dak should play. If Dak feels like he can play and he wants to play, let Dak play. But let's get some rest for Micah Parsons, Tank Lawrence, maybe Diggs, certainly Tony Pollard, who has a thigh issue. I think it's a really deep bruise in his thigh and probably should not be out there this week. Let's give guys who are key players who, if you're going to go all the way to the NFC Championship game and play in the last game of the season, Tank Lawrence needs to be more impactful and better. He's got terrible ankle issues with both ankles. He's got a knee issue, and he could certainly use a week or 2 off. No doubt about it. Micah Parsons, I'll give you a number here pretty soon that's going to shock you about how many plays he has played and where he's been playing. But Micah Parsons also was at the press conference yesterday, or at conversations with the media yesterday, with a brace on his right wrist. And we were like, he's like, it's football. It's a rough game. He also, a day or so ago, said very matter-of-factly, it's really hard to rush the passer. It's really hard. And if you don't think it is, and you're wondering about where I've been the last few weeks, I just invite you to come try getting through left and right tackles at the highest level and quarterbacks who are getting the ball out at the fastest level in the NFL and see how you do. First time we've really heard anything like that from him, where he's sort of defending himself, saying, I know what you want. You want 2 sacks every game. I want that too. But dude, this is hard. I get it. He needs some time off, even if it's just 1 game. He is young. He will bounce back. But you need this team to be firing on as close to all cylinders as possible. You already have cornerback issues. You're trying to figure out what's going on with the offensive line and get that to where it's a smooth operating system, both from a run blocking point of view and a pass blocking point of view. And statistically, I will tell you, this Cowboys offensive line been very good run blocking this year and very poor pass blocking. Statistically, they're among the worst 5 offensive lines in the NFL at protecting the passer. So again, maybe some of those interceptions are not all Dak's fault. So let's rest some people. Derrick Henry's not going to play. Tannehill's not going to play. It will be tough sledding no matter what for the Cowboys in Tennessee against the Titans defense running the football. And the Cowboys haven't been quite as good the last few weeks running the football, and they've turned a little bit to the pass. They can do it. Here's what I do if I'm a coach. I challenge Osei Odigizua and Dante Fowler and Carlos Watkins and Damone Clark and Sam Williams is going to play this week. And I tell all of those guys, you are integral, as you know, you are integral parts of what has been a very, very good defense. Tennessee's going to roll out a guy named Malik Willis at quarterback. Virtually can't throw. He can run a little bit, but he virtually cannot throw. Okay, so let's dominate this game. Let's throw up a 0. Tennessee gets 0. And the Cowboys win 12-0 this week. Come on, defense. You can do that. Come on, Dan Quinn. Scheme them up. Get everybody moving. This is also another game to figure out what it is you do with the cornerbacks. Thank God Duron Bland turns out to be maybe the best 5th-round draft pick that I can remember in the last 20 years. He can play, and Diggs can play. So what do you do? Where does Bland, who obviously can play inside or outside, where does he go in nickel and dime situations as opposed to base defense? All of that gets figured out in the next 2 games in the secondary so that when you get to the playoffs in Tampa on January, 8th or 9th, whatever it is, 13th or 14th, I've lost track, you know exactly who everybody is and what everybody does. That's all I'm saying. Get Nahshon right where he's comfortable. He had a lot of tackles last week, 6 tackles, 2 assists. Good for him. Israel Mukuamu played a little bit at cornerback. We've been touting him as a guy who at South Carolina was a pretty good quarterback. Mackenzie Alexander has the most experience. All of them played some last week. Let's get it settled. Let's get it settled. Let's get it to where it's aggressive. Let's get it to where everybody knows what they're doing. And don't forget, in-game injuries have continued to happen to this Cowboys game for the last couple of weeks. So you need all of those guys that I just mentioned to be ready because you're going to play a wild card game and then another game and then another game. And then you're going to play 4 games if you're going to the Super Bowl. Okay. It's a 3rd or 4th of the season left to go if you're planning on playing 4 more games. Win this game without Micah Parsons, Tank Lawrence, Dorrance Armstrong, and Tavon Diggs. Just do it. Tennessee's not even going to try. I mean, they're going to try, but they're not sending out a roster good enough to beat the Cowboys, even if we don't play 3 or 4 of our best players. That's my whole point. Micah Parsons was going to win Defensive Player of the Year. Through 7 games, he had, where is it? This is a good number. Through 7 games, he had 8 sacks, 9 tackles for loss. He was fast. You couldn't find him. You couldn't defend him. And he's going to go from NFL Defensive Rookie of the Year to Defensive Player of the Year. Now he's not. And a part of that is because he's tired. And I will go back to a loose quote from Dan Quinn last year talking about Micah Parsons when we said, dude, isn't he so good at rushing the passer that he's basically a defensive end all the time? And Dan Quinn said, no, he weighs 245 pounds. If I line him up on the end and have him pass rush all the time and be right there going against 350-pound offensive tackles, he's going to get beat up. I'm going to have to give him more rest and get him off the field. So we're going to move him around. He's more of a 3-4 linebacker who comes up and puts pressure on only when you know it's a passing down. That's sort of what he is. He's a hybrid. He's Derek Thomas, right? Derek Thomas did not put his hand in the ground and take on every left or right offensive tackle in the NFL for his entire career. He didn't, and neither did Lawrence Taylor. You move these unbelievable cats that are so fast and have makeup speed, even on running backs and wide receivers. You move them all over the place. They're too fast and quick for tackles when they don't see them all the time, right? That's what you do, but it's not what the Cowboys have done. Nick Bosa is going to win Defensive Player of the Year. He's up to 17.5 sacks, and Nick Bosa is getting better as the season goes along. Why is that? I looked it up, and I was like, why would Nick Bosa, as good as San Francisco's defensive is, and I trust their defensive coordinator and all of their coaching staff is terrific, what's the difference? I found out. Nick Bosa has played 152 less plays this year, standing on the field, getting beat up, making plays, than has Micah Parsons. 152. In theory, that's 3 games. Nick Bosa has played 3 less football games, and he missed one. So 4 less football games this year than Micah Parsons. That in itself explains almost everything. How does Nick Bosa have 11 sacks in the last 7 games, and Micah Parsons has 5? Nick Bosa's fresh. That's the key. Nick Bosa is fresh. He's also 2.5 inches taller, and he weighs 20 pounds more. So Nick Bosa is more of a legitimate, physically, defensive end. Taller, longer arms, better reach, better angles. He's more of a traditional, fast, tall defensive end. Micah Parsons isn't short, but they say 6'3", probably closer to 6'2", and they say 245. At this point in the season, it might be 235. He has run so much and he has played so much, he is light. That is not a man who stands on an end and takes on offensive tackles play after play, yet this year he has. So I implore Dan Quinn to go back to doing what he told all of us a year ago that he would do, and that is move him around. Make him find him. Let him be a walk-up pass rusher. I don't care where he walks up. Let him assess it. He and Van Der Esch figure out where people are and where they're going. Move some people around and send him through whatever hole you want to send him through, but do not make him play this week, maybe not next week, and do not continue to make him play down after down after down against 350-pound tackles. It's ridiculous, and it is the reason that he has slowed down. He's banged up. And as young as he is, he plays full out. He runs around that football field like a man possessed, and he runs so fast and so hard that when he does get hit in the thigh, in the calf, in the shoulder, in the chest, it hurts, and it sticks with him, no matter how young he is. Let's get back to being a capable, really good defensive football team, and that starts, to be honest with you, with some rest. The operation is not this year ever going to be again that we are a defense-first football team because of the injuries and the people that you're missing. And yes, I anticipate Leighton Van Der Esch, who's been on the cords for the last few days, I anticipate him being back for the playoffs, as well as Jonathan Hankins. So that will help with the run, and that will help the leadership in the middle of the field, getting the right plays called. Deron Bland is helping tremendously at the other cornerback. Way to go. But you got to get Nahshon Wright more comfortable. You cannot give up on Kelvin Joseph because of those in-game injuries that I talked about. You may need him. Israel Mukuamu hasn't really been a cornerback through college. These are all things to get ready for and to get prepared for, because now all that matters is the first week of the playoffs in Tampa against the Bucs. And the Bucs are probably going to end the season with a 3-game winning streak, and Tom Brady is still a terrifying player when it comes to playing in meaningful football games. The Tennessee Titans have lost 5 straight games, so I can't quite figure out what I expect out of them on Thursday night, because I already told you all that matters really to them officially is Week 18 against Jacksonville. Beat them and you're in the playoffs. But do you really want to go to Jacksonville next week if you're the Titans, having lost 6 straight? It's a primetime game on Thursday night, and literally it may be of the most embarrassing of circumstances for the NFL, because both of these teams may rest all of their best players. I think Dak's going to play, but there's going to be a lot of resting. So Derrick Henry probably sits. Listen, another great break for the Cowboys and for those who are going to play. Getting in front of that son of a bitch is no fun. It is an absolute beating. When you are done with the Titans and how they play on defense, as well as what they do on offense with Derrick Henry, you're beat up. You are absolutely beat up, and it's a short week. Remember, the 3rd game in 12 days for your Dallas Cowboys. So the Titans come in with a 5-game losing streak, pointing to Week 18, a little bit confused. What they will probably do is run this young man, Hassan Haskins, out, who has some game. They are a decent offensive line team as far as run blocking goes. If you're a fantasy player and all of a sudden you're in desperation, Hassan Haskins may be a guy that could help you, depending on what you think the Cowboys, without, in theory, Micah Parsons, Tank Lawrence, etc., do to defend the run. Cowboys are a 10-point favorite last I looked. I imagine that number comes back a little bit if you find out officially that some of these guys are getting rested. As far as Parsons, Defensive Player of the Year, was on the table, Nick Bosa is going to win that award. But if he's not the best player in the NFL on defense, then he's the second best, and I will take him every day. And all we really need out of Micah Parsons is rested, feeling better, and fast. A guy who can spend the next 2 weeks in the tub, on the courts, whatever it needs that he needs to do with Britt Brown to get where where his legs and the rest of his body feel as good as they felt in a long time. Because here's the stat I want to give you on this Cowboys defense the last 2 weeks, courtesy of Bob Sturm of The Athletic here locally. You know Bob Sturm very well. No team in the NFL has given up more yards through the air, or third down conversions in the last 2 weeks than the Dallas Cowboys. And yet I sit here telling you we're confident, cocky group headed to the playoffs the way we want to be. We are, but certainly we've all watched the defense get 1 sack in the last 3 games. We watched them give up 40 to Jacksonville and 34 last week to Philly. And I'm not sure there's a lot of resistance to a really good running game, nor is there any pressure on a passer. Those two things need to be worked out. But I still implore you to say that the way you work part of that out is you get some of these guys some rest. You just do. And you have the opportunity to do that. Philadelphia is not losing their last 2 games. They're not going to. The Cowboys beat Philadelphia last week, playing one of the best games they played all year with Philadelphia's backup quarterback, Gardner Minshew, in, and Philadelphia damn near won that game. They are not losing their last 2 games in a row at home. They're not. Push that aside and say to yourself, if you're the Dallas Cowboys, I'm happy where this team is. The only thing that would help the team more is to get guys on the defense as healthy as we can and get them some rest so we can get this defensive energy back to where we're seeing it. That would help. Then you go to Tampa and you win that game and you start ticking them off. And you make the best march you've made through the playoffs since 1995. That's what this team needs to do. Everybody needs to be on the same page for that. In my opinion, rolling people out there and letting everyone play in Tennessee to win a 17-3 game against the Titans because maybe Philadelphia will lose its last 2 games is a fool's errand. You are where you are. You're ready to play playoff football. And the only thing keeping you short of being as good as you're going to be are a couple of injuries to cornerbacks, which you're trying to figure out, and guys who are beat up. And your pass rushers on this team, all 3 of them that are really good at it, are beat the hell up. Let them rest. Let them rest. In the next 2 weeks, the Cowboys will play at the Titans. That's tomorrow night, as we know, and then at Washington. The Titans have no running back, no quarterback, and a good defense, and they will play physical. They're a proud team, and they have a good coach, and that's the method with which they play football. At Washington. Washington plays this week against Cleveland. They are playing for their playoff lives, and they are almost inexplicably going back to Carson Wentz. I imagine that will probably go good this week. If you look at Carson Wentz when he's had some time to get ready and he's gotten healthy, he'll have a really good game, and then what will he have after that? A really terrible game. I look forward to the Cowboys in week 18 being at Washington and having Carson Wentz be the person who's standing back there, throwing the football to the Cowboys, fumbling the football, and looking like the idiot that we know he is. This week, however, Washington probably wins. Brian Robinson, Antonio Gibson, if he's healthy enough, and a guy named Jonathan Williams are a 3-headed monster, and Washington wins this week, and then you get them, and you get the full force of them in week 18. The Cowboys will tee off on Carson Wentz. And maybe if you give Parsons this week off and it's a long week for next Sunday, maybe he plays in week 18. Maybe he says, you know what? This 23-year-old body regenerates itself pretty fast. I've been in the tub. I'm feeling good. Lots of ice baths. I'm doing all the things that I can do, and I feel great. And I want to go get 4 sacks against Carson Wentz. If that's the case, then let him play. Let Tank sit both of these games. 2 bad ankles and a bad knee. He ain't young anymore, and he was dominant, really, in the first 5 or 6 games of the year. It's not the same guy. It's not the same guy. So head to Washington for the last one as a tune-up. Rest Micah, rest Pollard, rest Tank, rest whomever else you need to. If Diggs needs a little bit of time, let him relax back there as well. I don't care, because when you get to Tampa, January 14th or 15th, you're going to look up, and it's going to be Tom Brady and Evans and Godwin and a whole bunch of guys that are still in that team that beat the shit out of you in week number 1. They remember. A whole bunch of guys that 2 years ago won the Super Bowl. It's not all of them. Gronk's not there. There are some key defenders missing. Certainly personality-wise, if you watch that team, they don't seem to be playing with the power, the impetus, the onus that they have been. But it's still Tom Brady. And he's going to find out whatever it is that the Cowboys are trying to do in the secondary, and he's going to pick it apart. And if you can't get pressure on him, it's going to be a dangerous game. You know it is. We're all going to be sitting there saying, we got the better team. We're faster. We're more athletic. We're rolling. Our offense is way better than theirs, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But when you line up on the 14th or 15th of January against Tom and Tampa Bay in Tampa Bay, it's going to be a nerve-wracking game. This team has to be ready, and it's so close. It's so close. So these are coaching decisions, big time decisions. I'm probably wrong when it comes to you play the string out. I think I heard Brian brought us on the fan say this morning, listen, 2 back with 2 games left to go. Stranger things have happened. They have. They have. And all of a sudden, your opportunity to move up in seeding and get home games throughout the playoffs and win the NFC East is still there. I'm an idiot for saying they should do anything else. But I firmly believe, based on the health or lack of it that this football team has at this point, you say, that's where we want him to be. This offense is playing pretty well. There are a lot of guys on this team that could use a week or 2 off. Maybe that's not the perfect way to go into the playoffs. Maybe the perfect way is winning 6 in a row and having all kinds of momentum, but you play the hand that you're dealt. And the truth is, this is the best Cowboys team that we've seen here, I don't know, since 06. It's been a long time where you were this well-rounded offensively, defensively, and on special teams. So the truth is, what matters now is you are in the playoffs. You are a good team. You have outstanding players across the board. You know, teams that win Super Bowls, you look out there and you say, I can name 6 names on this team that are fucking A great players. The Cowboys have that. They have that. They have that. Boom, boom, boom. Too many weapons on offense, too many weapons on defense. When it came down to it at the end of the game, plays got made offensively and defensively because that team has more good players. And the truth is, if you look at the NFC, Minnesota doesn't have very many good defensive players, so I can cross them off, even though they've got some good offensive players. San Francisco has really good players on the defensive side, but they've got an Iowa State quarterback that's doing well now. But I certainly believe the Cowboys can have a really big effect on a rookie quarterback from Iowa State in a huge leverage playoff game. I firmly believe that. So it comes back to, what do you think about Jalen Hurts and the Philadelphia Eagles? Maybe the Giants. I don't know who else. Maybe the Commanders. Whoever it is, if you think about it, who are you scared of? So the only thing to truly get ready for is to do what you've done. That the ship has sailed. You're in the playoffs. Now get ready to go for a run through these playoffs. And the best thing you can do for yourself now, since you're all beat up, is figure out what you're going to do schematically and health-wise in the defense, so that the defense is a playmaking group, as it was the first 7 or 8 games of the year. This is the way football seasons go. They never go how you think that they're going to go. When was the last time the Cowboys played a game you're like, that was easy? Probably Minnesota, right? You may say, oh, they hung 54 on Indy. But as I remember, that game didn't really get out of hand until mid-third. So the score looks like it was a rout. It really wasn't physically until mid-third. So the only easy game of the year that I can remember, easy, where it was just like, oh my God, everything went right, we played almost perfect, was Minnesota. Easy games don't happen, and they're only going to get harder. Tennessee tomorrow night, no matter who they play, is going to be a physical, close, low-scoring game. Take the under. And then when you go to Washington, it's going to be something similar, very physical. And then Tampa. Think of the physicality in those 3 games that you're trying to get past the first round. It's going to be tremendous. This team needs its rest because emotionally, as far as I'm concerned, they're probably in the best place they've been all year. The offense may be looking at the defense a little bit, but I don't think so, because they're smart enough to know that they would have never got to where they got in the last 7 games offensively if this defense hadn't been freaking fantastic for about a 7 or 8 week stretch. So I'm beating this horse, and it's not going to make any difference what I say, but this team has a chance to do something special in the playoffs for multiple reasons. 1, it's a very well-rounded good team. 2, it's well-coached. 3, there are leaders everywhere on this team. And 4, and maybe as important as anything, who is it in the NFC that you're terrified of? Cincinnati, Kansas City, and Buffalo are not in the NFC. They are not. You are not going to have to withstand an onslaught of 35 to 45 points in the playoffs. You're absolutely not. You're not. Those teams are not here. Let's get through the playoffs, and we'll take care of whichever one of those teams comes out on the other end. But right now, the NFC ain't that great. Minnesota's a little dangerous. Philadelphia is certainly a little dangerous, but you've seen them twice too. So when you see them for the 3rd time in the playoffs, there's going to be an advantage there for both teams, because you know who the other team is. You know what to expect. The shit talking's been had. Their coach is shit talking. Our coach isn't. This team is ready. The fans will be ready. The Eagles fans will be ready. The Cowboys, everybody will be ready. Everybody will be ready. This thing is what it is. But when you look at the NFC, the Cowboys have a real chance. I'm not predicting that they go all the way to the Super Bowl, but it will not surprise me a bit. So play for that. The reality of Philadelphia losing their last two and you winning your last two are not very good. I don't know. If I put a percentage on it, I would say it's 10%. Are you literally going to risk more health and the bounceability and the playability of some of your best players on this team for a 10% chance? I think it's ridiculous. I think it's a fool's errand, and you've played too hard and come through too much as the Dallas Cowboys organization this year to have what looks like a championship type team ready for the playoffs, to not have them as healthy as you can possibly get them. That's all I got. Enjoyed it. Thank you very much for watching Off of the Helmets. I will not see you again until next week when we begin to get ready for the Washington game. Thank you very much to East Coast sports investors. I'm Brady Tinker. It's Off of the Helmets. Go Cowboys. I'll see you next week.